we talked about LeBron and Stephen A. We talked about their ongoing back and forth. But since we last spoke, LeBron went on the Pat McAfee show, which those who may not know, LeBron rarely does interviews and just sit down interviews. Really, like in the age where podcasting is like really just like at the forefront of NBA media, at least. It's interesting to see him go on ESPN and actually have a sit down interview with one of the biggest names in sports. Obviously, LeBron had his other podcast, the one with JJ Redick, which apparently is coming back. So it's coming back though with Steve Nash and not JJ Redick. So it's going to be a little bit different. But yeah, Mind the Game has its second season coming up. But when it comes to actually sitting down with people in the media, sitting down with journalists, LeBron really doesn't do that. And he goes ahead and after this kind of back and forth with Stephen A., he sits down with, again, one of the biggest names in sports. Sits down with Pat McAfee. A lot of people were saying that it was petty because it's like, oh, like you have this beef with Stephen A. So you go over and sit down with probably his biggest rival within the world of ESPN, probably the second biggest name in sports media. I would say like people were like, oh, maybe Club Shay Shay, but like I don't know, like it's weird. You're not gonna, even though they have a close relationship, I think that would have been a weird dynamic. Regardless, you go on Pat McAfee's show and he just went off, like in terms of just like he just was calling out a lot of the narratives that have been painted throughout his life. And I personally thought it was a breath of fresh air when it comes to LeBron. I think I definitely have my opinions on him, but I think this cleared up a lot of things for myself. So have y'all seen clips? Have y'all seen anything regarding like this Pat McAfee interview at all?
I mean, I've seen like Stephen A. Tell me if this is the right clip. It was him talking about like LeBron attending like Kobe's funeral, like saying he didn't, even though he did, and like just going off saying, I didn't need to mention this, I don't need to mention that. Is that the one you're referring to?
So that was like a fallout from the Pat McAfee interview. It's like they had
all right,
their
public... I'll shut up then.
No problem. We'll get to that for sure. But basically, it's like they had their like very public like confrontation that got recorded and went viral. And so then Stephen A. addressed it on First Take. Stephen A. even went on Gil's Arena, which is Gilbert Arenas, his retired NBA player, his NBA podcast, and talked a little bit about the whole situation. It was a little bit more unfiltered because obviously it's not on cable television, so he had the chance to just be a little bit more honest about his thoughts and just a little bit more raw in his judgment of everything that or I guess you could say like more raw, just like overall in his words. But the Pat McAfee interview, that's crazy.
Sorry, man, that was a pause moment. I'm sorry, I had to. Spam and raw. Talking about spam meat, now you're talking about raw. Hey. Continue. Continue though. Continue.
Anyways, he addressed all the criticism or the critiques on the JJ Redick podcast, saying that kind of how he's often painted as this big like mastermind who like is pulling the strings behind the scenes, and that he shut down the idea that like the podcast had anything to do with JJ Redick's coaching hire, which I personally appreciated. I could side with him on that. I think a lot of people were trying to find something in that, but I just think I personally don't think it was that much of a big deal. But he addresses that. He addresses the decision, which is when he announced that he was going to join the Miami Heat in his free agency summer after his first stint with the Cavs. And what he brought up was the fact that like it's often seen as this big like, I guess you could say like attention seeking moment where I'm going to do a whole special on ESPN and I'm going to announce where I'm going, like a college decision day, type thing. But he also mentioned that it raised about $2.5 million for a good cause. He did not specify what that was, and can look into that. But I thought that was a cool thing that he cleared up. He was also made a point about like not being on speaking terms with Jordan, which I think a lot of people dragged, but that had not, like, again, neither here nor there. He even addressed Brian Windhorst, who is like the biggest, I guess you could say, journalist who covers LeBron James and who covered him for the majority of his career. So basically saying like, y'all, this dude keeps saying that him and I are best friends, or that him and I are so close, man. This dude, I don't really know who this guy is, you know. Which I thought was funny. And that Windhorst has also come out and drawn up, I guess you could say, like false narratives about LeBron, like this idea that he signed with Nike because of Michael Jordan. And LeBron was like, no, I signed it because they slid me a good check and I just wanted to buy my mom a house, which I thought was funny. So overall, just like lots of funny moments in that interview, but he addressed Stephen A for a very small portion of it. He did say that Stephen A is currently on his big like Taylor Swift tour right now, addressing the situation, and kind of gave the impression that he wants to be done with it, right? And as a result, Stephen A was also angry about this, which led to the rant on First Take that Alexi was just alluding to. But I know Alexi, you mentioned, or like you've already spoken on it, but Dre, have you seen any bits of the podcast with McAfee or not?
Yeah, I've seen mainly all these things that you referred to, and kind of because these are all segments that got turned into like longer discussions on like First Take and other platforms. You know, whenever LeBron speaks, they're fed for weeks, so they ran with them. But yeah, I saw a lot of these clips. It was a lot, honestly, so it's hard to even know where to start, like to get into. I know the main thing we're talking about is LeBron versus Stephen A, but like the whole Jordan thing was interesting, like you mentioned. The Windy thing, I do want to speak on the Windy thing. I personally didn't appreciate that. I didn't like it's one thing to say like I'm not that close with Brian Windhorst, but like Windy never claimed to be best friends with LeBron. Like, he's made his career covering LeBron for sure, and that's, you could see that however you want to see that. I think, hey man, he was smart and he was ahead of the game. But to say like, oh, this dude's a weirdo, like say like, oh, dude's acting like he's my best friend, he's a weirdo, I think that was a kind of a necessary shot. Because you could say like Windy, maybe he's said things that LeBron doesn't appreciate over time, but if you really were to totalize like everything he said over the last 20-25 years, he's like 95% on LeBron's side all the time. Like, he's always defending LeBron and on these shows. I think only recently when he's doing more like First Take and stuff like that, because he has to be more, I guess, impartial. But even then, in most instances, he takes LeBron's side. I think it's weird, like, he said one thing LeBron doesn't agree with, and all of a sudden this dude's a weirdo. Maybe the behind the scenes, this has been brewing for a long time, I'm sure. But I don't know, I didn't appreciate it. Because even after that, when, I'm sure we'll get to like Stephen A's response, but like when Stephen A's like going off on First Take, and then he's on there with like Perk and Windy, he's clearly trying to get them to be on his side. And Perk, you know, Perk's with him because Perk and Braun aren't cool anymore. But Windy, even then, took the high road. When Stephen A like is clearly keeps bringing up like, yeah, he's trying to go at Brian Windhorst, Windy doesn't like take the bait, and like he's like, oh yeah, I'm about to dog on LeBron too. He's like, he just kind of like lets it go. I'm sure behind the scenes he's probably annoyed by that or like sad about that, but even then he keeps it professional. He doesn't go at LeBron. So I don't know. I felt like that was kind of unnecessary. I feel like now you kind of like hurt Windy's credibility. But yeah, another thing he said, I know we're not going to talk about it too much, but you know, LeBron, he may seem like a chill dude. He's like, oh, everything on the surface, just like chopping it up, but he's a narrative merchant. He's too smart, and I know he's too smart to think he's just saying things randomly. This dude tried to flip the whole big three joining the Heat thing into saying, "Oh, Boston had a big four before me." I know what he's trying to do, bro. He's not slick. He's trying to build this narrative like Boston was the big four, and then I had to overcome the big four, and then I went to the Heat and we overcame that, and then the big three isn't that big of a deal because they did it first. But it's not the same at all. It's not the same at all. So him trying to do that, he's not slick. He's trying to rewrite history, and people are gonna buy into that because it's LeBron saying it, and there's people who wouldn't have remembered that time. But you're not slick, Bron. You're not slick. I see you with that. But yeah, the whole Stephen A thing, I'm sure we'll get into that.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you brought that up because I didn't even catch that. I mean, I saw that he was referring to like people overlook Rondo. Rondo was in his young years, but like he still was the one like facilitating on the court. And I didn't even catch that. So that's a good catch because I can so see that. And what I will say, like we're talking about all the things he's debunking. I think it's become such a norm, and I guess in many cases it is the right, quote unquote, right thing to say, like, hey, say that like these when players are interviewed, right? They mention like, oh, I tune out the noise. I'm not really focused on what the media has to say. Like the fact that the biggest name in basketball felt it necessary to go on a podcast and debunk all the narratives that followed him along pretty much his entire career shows just how much those narratives can stick with the player and how much it bothers them. So LeBron being someone who is really should be above all of the narratives that have been placed on him, right? You would think that his game would speak for itself. This is a situation where he's going on a podcast and he is really like just taking the time to address a lot of the things that have been thrown his way. And I thought it was interesting. Like I said, enjoyed it because I felt like I got to see a side of LeBron that I had not seen before, that I appreciated more. But I will say, like, I think this is just a testament to the fact, and we can transition over to the whole Stephen A situation. You're coming at the biggest name in sports media. You're coming at what many would consider to be the bully in sports media, because Stephen A does have the ability to create a narrative that will stay with the player forever, right? Like we're here years after Kwame Brown has like talked or stepped foot on an NBA court. But if you bring up Kwame Brown to any, I guess, like average sports fan, they're gonna know him based off that Stephen A rant from years back, right? So I just think it's interesting that these two are clashing, and the fact that they find it so necessary to publicly address each other on separate platforms. So I think that's been huge. And I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but basically Stephen A also went on his own platform on the Stephen A Show and said something around the lines of like, man, if Bron put his hands on me, I would have swung right back. I think he acknowledged like, oh, like I would have gotten beat up, I would have gotten jumped. But he did say that, and then that led to LeBron's hilarious Instagram post where he's showing a video of Stephen A from what Stephen A claims to be like a few years back after he had like a torn, which I'm like, Stephen A, man, why are you trying to like save yourself? Like, he got publicly embarrassed, and I kind of found it annoying that he didn't want to take that L. He was like, man, I just had like a torn rotator cuff, and this was 10 years back, and I was not in the shape that I'm in right now. I'm like, bro, he just posted a video of you boxing, and your form was funny, and that's what we're laughing at. But he felt the need to kind of like protect his image, or like kind of be like, well, don't get it twisted. Like that's not what I could throw right now. If that's what you think I can throw right now, then like be my guest. But you know, I just thought that was a little corny. But again, it's showing that the massive egos, or maybe not egos, but I guess you could say like the giants, right, in their respective fields are getting their feelings hurt. Both of them are in their feelings. Do you not agree?
No, they're definitely in their feelings. I think part of it is because this has been brewing for a long time, and now it's just all like coming to a head. But it's kind of crazy seeing them be so openly against each other. I think that's the thing. I think there's always been like behind the scenes, maybe like little murmurs here and there, but they've mainly kept it like professional. But now the gloves are off, it seems. So it's interesting to see. I guess neither of them wants to back down. I think they're both the quote unquote alpha types, and that's how they became top of each of their respective fields, and neither of them want to back down. So it's interesting to see where it's going to go. I don't know how much more there is to even happen, but I also thought it was over a few weeks ago, and then obviously Bron at the interview, and now it's going again. And you know, Stephen A is going to run with anything. So I'm not sure how much more this is going to continue, especially because Bron's now starting his podcast, although he says that restarting his podcast. He said that one's just all about X's and O's, which is funny because saying like, oh, you just want the game it to be about the game, but then he did just do an hour plus interview that was mainly about narratives, which he didn't have to do, but it is what it is. You know, Bron just gonna he's the number one cap star. I don't put it like that. I'm not saying he's capping in this situation, but he is historically the number one cap star. Like, and that's the thing I like the most about Bron. Don't get me wrong. He's not my favorite player. People think I hate him because I don't have him as the GOAT or even top two. But the best thing about LeBron to me is the fact that he's constantly capping and he gets caught capping. And that whole part of him, like the cringe part of him, because he's like the least, for someone being the best player in his sport for however many years it's been at this point, he has the least aura, as the kids would say, out of any top athlete I've ever seen. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, he just oozes cringe. That's what I actually like about him. Like, it's just funny to me. So
I never thought of it like that. It's
kind of
really
wild.
good point.
If you think about it, like, if you think about, and maybe it's also because he's the most accessible, but even if you think about, like, maybe Mahomes is kind of getting to that level, but even then you don't see many Mahomes clips. But like Brady, even though I didn't like Brady had like an aura about him. Obviously Messi, Ronaldo have their auras. Any sport you can think, Usain Bolt had his aura, whatever. But LeBron is just like, I never saw LeBron that way. Like, LeBron is just funny to me. Like, reading the first page of the book, you can't name a Godfather quote despite it being his favorite movie. Like, just all this different funny stuff.
It kind of
like,
gives like the Anthony vibes a bit.
Yeah,
where, like a reverse Anthony maybe, where like Anthony, you know, people meme and joke around like, oh, this dude's got so much aura, he's gonna go and wreck these dudes. When at least at Man United that was not the case, but LeBron, it's like he's doing the exact opposite. Like, he has the potential on the court to do his thing, to be a top player. I'm not going to rank him because I don't know enough about ball to do that. But every action he does outside is just ridiculous.
Cringe, bro.
And
yeah,
even with what's going on right now, like it is kind of weird to see a player like so far ahead in their game, like, and I mean that age-wise, like being so old. Like, you're towards the end of your career, and to pick this battle now, it just seems very odd to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I just think, again, it's the egos have been bruised, and now you have them kind of coming at each other. And I won't lie though, like I said, I think I have a different outlook on LeBron. I definitely agree with all the corny allegations. I think that's always been my biggest issue with LeBron. It's like, yo, like, you don't need to. I often find it as like kind of like attention seeking. I know Dre mentioned the whole, what was it, like the narrative merchant, but I just think it's so often seen as like this bit, like, yes, LeBron is a larger than life like individual because of what he's accomplished. I think he likes to buy into that and kind of like play into it as well with like I don't know, just like go through all his Instagram captions, like hashtag the kid from Akron. Like, bro, like, relax, man. Like, I don't know, like hashtag the kid from Akron. Hashtag,
that's so
hashtag
great.
We know you've been spamming
like,
that caption for 8-10 years. But you're right.
And that's been my issue with LeBron. Is like, It's like, bro, you're already cool enough, bro. Don't try to gain any more cool points. It looks cringe. It looks bad on you. It's not a good look.
It doesn't
And
help too when
I don't
all
know.
your fans are making remixes of songs about you. Like his fan base even contributes to the loss of aura.
Those have been funny. Those have been interesting. The original one I think was the best one. The LeBron James.
I feel
I
like
don't
it's
even
come
know the
around.
original, dude. There are so many. Like,
I think LeBron fans, like genuinely, especially like maybe 5 years ago, probably from like the Warriors series era into like the bubble championship, Mickey Mouse ring. I think around that era, like they were actually really cringe. But I think post pandemic, they've gone so far in the cringe direction that it's come around and it's become just kind of funny. Like it's kind of like self-referential humor now, where it's like they're kind of in on it as well. I'm sure there's still some that are just like delusional, but it's become kind of like gone so far in that direction that's kind of become funny. Just like everyone's kind of in on like, okay, Brown fans are just silly, and they kind of lean into it. Which I don't mind as much now. But there was a period in time where I was like, these guys are insufferable.